All right, class, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to be dissecting a really fascinating and foundational piece of the Indian Constitution. We're talking about Article 8. Now, this is the part of the law that had to reach across oceans, really, to define what it meant to belong for the global Indian. It's a remarkable story.
So I want you to just picture the scene, right? It's around 1950. A brand new nation is born. But what do you do? What do you do about the millions of people who have these deep, deep Indian roots? People living in East Africa, the Caribbean, Southeast Asia, who are outside the brand new borders. How do you define their connection to this new India? That was the huge puzzle the framers had to solve.
And their answer? Well, their answer was Article 8. You can think of it as a unique constitutional bridge built specifically for the Indian diaspora. Now, this wasn't some kind of automatic pass, not at all. It came with very specific rules, so let's break down exactly what you had to do.
First question, how far back could your family tree go? Well, the law cast a pretty wide net, but it was specific. 3 generations. So citizenship could be claimed if you, or your parents, or even your grandparents were born in India. This was a really smart balance, right? It was inclusive enough to connect with that recent diaspora, but it was also clear enough to actually be a workable legal standard. But what did India even mean back then? And this right here is a vital distinction. When Article 8 talks about India, it's not looking at the modern map we see today. No, it's using the definition from a much older law, the Government of India Act of 1935, and that refers to undivided India. So what does that mean? It means if your grandparents were born in Lahore or maybe in Dhaka, for the purposes of this one article, they were born in India. Okay, so let's say you meet that ancestry requirement. Is that it? Are you a citizen? Absolutely not. Article 8 laid out a very clear 2-step process. First, you had to prove your lineage. But second, and this is the active part, you had to physically go to an Indian embassy or a consulate and formally register as a citizen. This need for an affirmative act was so key, it made citizenship a conscious, deliberate choice, not just something you passively inherited from thousands of miles away.
But you know, a law is just words on a page until it gets tested in the real world. So let's shift gears a bit. Let's move from the constitutional text and into the courts and see how these rules were actually interpreted when people started bringing their cases forward.
This brings us to the Parmanand Sharma case, which really presented the key legal challenge. You had a man of Indian origin who had been living in India, and he argued, hey, my heritage alone should be enough. But the law seemed pretty strict. So the question for the court was simple. Was your bloodline sufficient, or was that act of registration truly a non-negotiable step? And the court's decision was unambiguous. Totally clear. Citizenship under Article 8 is not automatic. It is not a birthright that gets passed down passively. The court in Parmanand Sharma held that formal registration at a consulate is absolutely 100% mandatory. This really shows the difference between Article 8 and other citizenship rules like Article 5.
Okay, so registration is mandatory. Got it. But that brings up another critical question. What kind of citizenship did you get? Was this some sort of second-class citizenship? Did someone who registered abroad have fewer rights than someone born in Delhi? A very, very important question for the courts to answer.
And the answer, which came from the Supreme Court in the landmark Abdul Sattar case, was a resounding no. This quote says it all, really. A person registered under Article 8 acquires full Indian citizenship. Not partial, not limited, full citizenship, with every single right and every single obligation that comes with it. Now, let's fast forward to today. The conversation around the global Indian often brings up terms like OCI and NRI, and it is very, very easy to confuse these modern ideas with the constitutional citizenship we've been talking about. So let's clear this up, because this is a really common point of confusion. So, an Article 8 citizen, through that combination of ancestry and consular registration, held full Indian citizenship. Simple. An OCI, or Overseas Citizen of India, is based on Indian origin but under a totally different law, the Citizenship Act. It grants a special status. The best way to think about it is like a lifelong visa, but it is not citizenship. And then an NRI, a non-resident Indian, that's just a tax and resident status for someone who is already an Indian citizen. See? 3 very different legal categories. And the most important point to take away from this is this. India does not permit dual citizenship. An OCI card is an incredibly valuable thing. It has a ton of benefits, but it is not a second passport. It's a special visa status. It is not citizenship. That distinction is absolutely fundamental. So, we've covered the text, we've gone through the case law, and we've cleared up some common points of confusion. Let's distill all of this down to the essential notes, the key takeaways you need to remember.
First and foremost, just like the Parmenon Sharma case made crystal clear, citizenship under Article 8 was not a passive thing. It required that affirmative, official act of walking into a consulate and registering. Your ancestry alone was never, ever enough.
And second, please don't confuse modern schemes with constitutional citizenship. The OCI card is a special status, it's a type of visa, it is not a passport. India's stance on having only a single citizenship remains firm.
So we're left with this final thought. Article 8 was a product of a very specific historical moment, the birth of a new nation. And yet, the principles it established about identity and belonging and the relationship between a country and its diaspora, they continue to resonate. So it begs the question, how does a 75-year-old law continue to shape the very idea of what it means to be a global Indian today?